Sirens, the podcast where we discuss myths and mysteries from around the world. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Yenny. And I'm pleased to tell you that after months and months of asking, I finally said yes to doing this episode.
Yenny.
All right, I asked her, and I have been going nuts about covering the lost city of Atlantis. And since this is our 10th episode, Sarah.
10!
Get ready to buckle up, y'all, because we are deep diving into the...
I see what you did there.
Yes, I did do something. We are deep diving into one of the biggest legends out there that is still having people search for clues today.
I am so excited, Yenny. Mostly because I know how excited you are.
I know.
But I do need to come clean to our listeners just real quick. I have been pretty useless to Yenny the last week and a half because I've been hiking in the wilderness and didn't have any internet access. So, really, that left Yenny to her own devices, be that a good or a bad thing. So, Yenny, the floor is yours since you did basically all of the research for this episode.
Oh my gosh, I feel so smart.
You are so smart.
This is I was doing this and I was like, this is how Sarah feels. And it was raining. So I was like super in the zone.
You're super in the
listening
zone.
To lo-fi.
You have like that dark academia playlist going. And then like you start getting,
oh my gosh,
you start getting really into it. And you're like, well, I just need to keep looking up more. And then all of a sudden you're in a rabbit hole and you're like, how do I claw my way out of this?
Absolutely. And before we even begin, I did want to tell you guys, because actually we wanted to tell you guys that being our 10th episode, we are so grateful to be able to do this, and we would love to just mention that you can support us by visiting our Ko-fi and helping us out. The link is always placed in all of our summaries, and any little bit helps us move forward and continue being able to set aside time to research and do all the things that we love to do, which is educate you guys and also make you laugh.
Right. This podcast brings us so much joy, and we want to keep bringing joy to you, our listeners. And so like Yenny said, any little bit helps. And I think we're ready to keep on going with the story there, Yenny.
Absolutely. We had to just like push it in there, right? I gotta say.
Just a little bit.
Us.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Anywho, let's go into this. So the first ever mention of Atlantis came from a story written by Plato. But before we cover how Plato brought Atlantis to the world, let's find out a little bit more about him. Sarah, care to educate us?
Oh, yeah. I can actually help with this part. So.
Oh, that I know.
I can. Side note, friends, family, dear listeners, I'm going to give you a very brief little overview of Plato, but if you want to go into more depth of Plato, but reading some of his larger works is a little bit intimidating, I highly recommend the book Plato and a Platypus. That's all. All right, so.
I don't even know how those two go together, but I want to know.
It's basically all of Plato's philosophies and ideas explained through jokes. It's wonderful.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, it's all of Plato explained through the eyes of a platypus.
No.
And that would have been pretty cool. Perry the Platypus.
Right.
Oh my God.
Perry the Platypus. Yes, it's Plato and a Platypus Walk into a Bar by Daniel Martin Klein. So.
Oh, I love that.
Now that we have had that plug in. Born sometime between 428 BC and 423 BC, because we don't quite have the exact dates, Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher, a student of Socrates, and a teacher of Aristotle. Again, there's some debate about all of this. Bear with me. This is an overview. His primary influences were his teacher Socrates and the philosophers Heraclitus and Parmenides, who moved away from believing in the mythological origins of the universe and began focusing on metaphysics, which is the study of abstract concepts like what does it mean to exist? What does it mean to know? And other issues such as the concept of time, causation, reality, and identity.
Maybe they were in their 30s, because I feel like I think of all of this. I'm always questioning, what does it mean to exist?
They had existential crises and created the school of philosophy. I love it.
There you go.
They're dealing with some heavy stuff. They put their anxiety to good use. What are we doing, Yenny?
What are we made a podcast.
Exactly. All right. So Plato founded the Platonic Academy, naturally, also known as the Academy, around 387 BC in Athens. This was the first school center or college of philosophy in the Western world. He is often considered the father of modern Western philosophy and the father of discourse and dialogues. Plato debated ethics. Where our ideas and beliefs come from? What is truth? What is a soul? And he believed justice, beauty, and equality were integral pieces for a good human life. He challenged his teacher Socrates' ideas of a good life being solely due to possessing certain knowledge, having certain ideas and attaining certain, information. Plato believed the way to a good life was found through the distinctly human property of the soul, which made humans capable of reason, love, and appetite.
He was pretty sweet.
I know, I dig it. Plato's most famous works include The Republic, The Allegory of the Cave, Plato's Laws, and the Timaeus, which I think you have a few things to say about, right, Yinny?
Oh, absolutely. So, while Plato is mainly recognized as a philosopher, he was also known for writing dialogues. Dialogues are two or more characters talking to each other, and while we may see them today as just a part of a story and not the full version, Plato used dialogues to write out his ideas and opinions. In fact, there's around 30 to 40 recorded dialogues.
And just real quick, I do want to mention the dialogues are an important facet of philosophy and the history of philosophy because unlike a treatise, which is a declarative statement of how someone should think or should do things, Plato's dialogues were written conversations that showed how thought processes were formed and gave the characters chances to define and defend their opinions and ideas. We love a spirited debate.
We do. And we're using such big words today. Who are
there
we?
There was a part in your notes, Yenny, where I was reading through it, and I don't remember what sentence it was, but I was like, oh, look at her breaking out the $10 words.
I know. Who am I? Actually, someone the other day goes, aren't you a Southerner? And I go, ew, I'm from Miami.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Don't call her that dirty word. I'm the Southerner.
How dare you? Oh my God, my stomach is grumbling right now.
Oh,
and
no.
It keeps going rah, rah, rah. It's because it's so happy to learn about Atlantis.
Do you need a snack? Are you good?
No, my snacky is the snack of knowledge that we're getting here. So actually, real quick, total side note as well, there is a big window of doubt on whether he, in fact, and by he I mean Plato, was the author for some of these, which is a very naughty thing, Plato.
Hey, you're allowed to be naughty when your works are the only ones out of all your philosopher friends that have survived for over 2,000 years.
I'm sure there's a conspiracy theory about that.
Of course there is.
There has to be. So, and guys, we will not be discussing conspiracy theories regarding Atlantis today. We are not a conspiracy theory podcast. We're just going to go through how Atlantis came to be and how the story of Atlantis came to be. That's
because
it.
we
That's
do fully realize that like Atlantis has kind of become like this catch-all term for like derogatory pseudoscience and sort of this fake philosophy, this weird esoteric knowledge that, isn't really backed up by anything. We are simply going through the history of like where this legend came from and some of the more distinctive parts of its modern history.
Yes.
So we're not fluffing up our hair and going, guys, we found it. Atlantis.
We're not doing that. So no one has exact dates as to when the philosopher wrote these dialogues. And historians also don't exactly know in what order they are to be read.
The dialogues?
Yeah, the dialogues. They only have an assumption of how you should read them, but there is no dates.
Okay.
Educated guesses have brought us to the point where his works are grouped into 3 periods: early, middle, and late.
Nice.
The reason I bring up these dialogues and their timed creation is because one of them, titled Timaeus, is where we first encountered the city of Atlantis.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Sorry, we had to go through history.
We did.
So, oddly enough, Timaeus still has scholars divided today as to which period of dialogue it could belong to. Some scholars argue that it's in the late period, while others sometimes say it's an earlier period dialogue that Plato did. The big issue is, how can you truly time a written piece of work?
You do have to wonder when it was written, since Plato admitted that his views of the world changed as he aged. Was Atlantis an earlier or a later interest?
Timaeus, said to be written around 360 BC, is a dialogue between the characters Socrates, Hermocrates, Critias, and Timaeus. A lot of names. I know. You ain't even ready for how many names I'm going to be saying.
I'm sorry. After you said all those names, I just heard like Philoctetes from Hercules going, a lot of yeses.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. So I say characters because, in all truth, guys, there is no proof of whether they existed or not. I read most of it, as per my research duties, I did read it. And so I've got a lot to say, so bear with me.
Ooh, Yenny's about to nerd out on us. I'm so ready.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so ready.
I'm so proud. So the dialogue begins with Socrates recapping what he had told his colleagues the night before. I did want to point out one philosophical view said by Socrates that I thought was pretty cool. So, Sarah, indulge us.
End quote. No one should ever know his own child, but they were to imagine that they were all one family. Those who were within a suitable limit of age were to be brothers and sisters. Those who were of an elder generation, parents and grandparents. And those of a younger children and grandchildren.
Isn't that rather interesting? I mean, I can't say I'm against this notion if it means that the entire community cares for each other in a way that no child or adult is left alone. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are indigenous tribes out there that still do this today.
Yeah.
I will say, though, some philosophical points Socrates gives are kind of cringy, so reader, beware.
Humans containing multitudes will love some ideas and hate some ideas that all come from the same person. C'est la vie.
Yep, c'est la vie. Anyway, back to the story. After Socrates gives a rundown of all the philosophical jargon, he asks the others to entertain him with a feast of discourse.
Ooh.
And I thought, Sarah, don't we do that? Don't we give our listeners a feast of discourse?
You yourself were just hungering for knowledge, so...
There you go.
Look at us.
There you go. Look at us. While the dialogue is titled Timaeus, T for short, isn't the person that speaks of Atlantis. It is, in fact, Critias who mentions the name first.
Okay.
So imagine, I read through all of Timaeus to be like,
Yeah, great.
What?
Great.
I was like, well, great.
Was that your tummy? That was a good one.
That was I'm telling you, the hunger for knowledge is real.
And it's starting to process, it's digesting all of this.
I don't know what's going on.
That was great.
Okay. Starting out by describing a tale his great-grandfather had heard from Solon. I think it's Solon.
Yeah, we're going to go with Solon.
We're going to go with Solon. The wisest of the 7 sages, speaking on Athenian cities, and I quote, which have passed into oblivion through lapse of time and the destruction of mankind, and one in particular greater than all the rest.
Ooh.
I wonder. So, by the way, if I didn't explain this well, Critias is the one that's saying all of this. So This is Critias talking in Timaeus's book.
Talking about his great-grandfather hearing from Solon, the wisest of the 7 ages. Yeah, easy to keep track of. So easy
to keep track of.
Simple.
Solon goes to the city of Sais in the Egyptian Delta and has a conversation with a priest of very great age who tells him the story of Atlantis, one that was at that time already 9,000 years old.
Yeesh.
So this is old. So to sum it up real quick, this is a story within a story within a story. A telling of a telling of another telling. He told what he heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy.
Are you telling me that Atlantis started out as philosophers' gossip?
Apparently. And I was like, why couldn't Plato just write the story of Solon? What was the point of bringing Critias into this?
Why do we have
and
to have like
Timaeus?
this storyception? Yeah, like...
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. So anyways, with all of this laid out for you guys, here's what the priest tells of the city of Atlantis.
Oh, good.
Yeah, finally. It is found within the Atlantic Ocean, within the mouth of the Pillars of Heracles.
Side note for my geography lovers, because I had to look this up because I am not a geography buff. The Pillars of Heracles are in the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea and separates Europe from Africa. Continue, Yinny.
Thank you, Sarah. The island is depicted as being larger than that of Libya and Asia put together.
Okay, I know I said I wasn't a geography buff, but now I have so many questions about, like, that much land in that location.
Yeah, me
Okay.
too. After Atlantis, you could go to other islands, and I'm quoting this exactly from Critias. Seemingly, actually, I lie, and I'm quoting this from Timaeus. Seemingly the opposite side of the continent which surrounded the true ocean.
So Yinny and I have both been very confused about this. She wrote this down.
Yes.
I was reading the notes. I was like, what does this mean? She's like, great question. And after much discussion and consideration, we're going to go with the notion that the true ocean Critias speaks of might just be the Mediterranean, based off of, where the pillars of Heracles are and all that sort of stuff. So
Yes.
if we're wrong, gently correct us, because we did try. We were trying to figure out.
We tried.
Because it was just an odd phrase. So.
Yeah. And you know what? This is the golden star of you tried.
All right. I'll shut up so Yinny can keep going.
Oh, stop it. So the entrance to Atlantis was a narrow one, and the city was said to be a harbor. The priest states Atlantis was a great, wonderful empire, ruling not just the primary island, but islands around it as well. But unfortunately, a series of earthquakes and floods came to the people of this thriving city, and in a single day and night, the island of Atlantis disappeared, presumably into the depths of the ocean. After its disappearance, a huge mud barrier would lay where the island once was, and would make it impossible for voyagers to pass. The end.
That's it?
Yep. Well, at least for the dialogue Timaeus, I mean. So Timaeus only had that little excerpt, and I read through the whole thing waiting to hear more, and nothing was ever said. But then came the dialogue Critias, which goes more in depth about the city and is sometimes paired with Timaeus' dialogue, since it's sort of a continuation to what Critias had begun speaking of.
I would hope so. I need to know more, Yinny.
Yeah, it was such an odd cliffhanger there, but
like this is
you haven't even seen the biggest cliffhanger.
Well, it's like this short little excerpt, and this is what has sparked like millennia of obsession and mythology and treasure hunters.
Yep.
Like, okay, Yinny, there's got to be more. Tell me more.
So, in Critias, Hermocrates pushes Critias, or C for short, to continue his story of the ancient citizens of Atlantis. In the old days, the gods had all distributed the earth among themselves by allotment, and the lot for Poseidon held the island of Atlantis. Poseidon fell in love with a mortal named Plato and had children with her. So he placed his mortal baby mama and their demigod children in the center of Atlantis, where he broke the ground and made islands to encircle it. Within the middle, he placed 2 springs of water, one cold, one warm, and made all kinds of food spring up from the ground in Plato's new home.
What a good provider. Zeus, you could learn a thing or two from your brother in this one instance.
Oh my God, yeah. Zeus, we gotta just cover Zeus on his own because he got a lot going on.
Poseidon too.
And a lot of women.
He's got his own foibles. So, but in this instance, Poseidon's
He's
doing
a good
great.
guy.
Yeah, in this instance, he's doing great. So proceed.
Poseidon divided Atlantis into 10 portions. He had male twins with Plato and gave the eldest of the twins, Atlas, the center island where Plato lived, as well as a large portion of the rest of Atlantis, making him king.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, the eldest son of each generation was made king and their island was prosperous. Real quick side note, the child that they had, Atlas, is the reason for then the name the Atlantic Ocean. Which is another part of this, right? So there's like some a little mythology here that we're coming through.
And Yinny, I don't know if you saw this or anything. Is this the same Atlas who like supposedly holds up the world?
I thought so, and I'm not sure if it is. I didn't go that in. I did think about it. I was like, that sounds like the guy who holds the world.
We can always look that up later.
Or if any of our readers know if that is Atlas who holds the world, go ahead and comment or leave us a message on Discord. It'd be cool to talk more about it. The greatness of their empire made foreign countries curious, and many brought them things from their parts of the world. Yet Atlantis never needed any of these gifts, for everything they needed could be found within their island, blessed by Poseidon himself.
Nice.
They had an abundance of food, animals, materials, even orichalcum, an ore that was second to gold in those times.
Ooh, sparkles.
With all the material and sustenance needed to satiate the citizen. Did you write that or did I write that?
You wrote that. That was the
wow.
That was the sentence. That's the sentence. That's the one that I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. Look at
I'm
you.
surprised, but I don't even. You see, lo-fi music and rainy day makes me all this educational. So
satiate.
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 Satiate. Look at that. Okay. With all the material and sustenance needed to satiate the citizens,
Ooh.
they grew tremendously. They built roads to and from the royal palace and bridges that connected each island.
Oh, cool.
The royal palace was one to be revered, growing with every generation to be more marvelous and powerful than the last. They built a canal just big enough to fit the widest of vessels to make a passage from the sea directly to the center, becoming now a harbor.
Okay.
So we're now kind of describing a little bit better what Critias had said in the first portion in Timaeus.
Okay,
right?
cool.
So, because remember, Critias had said it was a very narrow entrance.
Right, okay.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Nice.
While some buildings in Atlantis were simple, the citizens also built more intricate buildings with different stones, making it sort of like a rainbow-like city, which is just gorgeous. Yeah, there were quite a few walls as well. You had the outermost wall, which was covered in brass, then another wall covered by tin, and then the third, which held the palace, would flash red due to being built with orichalcum.
This sounds so pretty. Yenny, I want to live in Atlantis. It sounds like an artist's dream.
Me too. And while we'd love to go more into Atlantis' architecture and other details regarding the island, for time purposes, we're gonna have to go on to the more juicy part.
Yes, let's hear it.
Yes. So Critias states that the Atlantis citizens and their kings were people of good nature and humility. Atlanteans were also masterful warriors, both inland and at sea. They had 10,000 chariots and 1,200 ships.
Holy smokes.
A true force to be reckoned with, especially at that time.
Yeah.
Now, saying all of this, don't let their military expertise fool you into thinking that they were such harsh people. They didn't care for gold or luxury.
Of course they didn't. They had orichalcum.
Absolutely. But for virtue and friendship with each other, as that was what helped them prosper.
Yenny, is it possible to fall in love with an entire people? Because,
oh my gosh.
They're fierce, they're strong, they're humble, they're kind.
I know. The greatest qualities of men, right?
Right? Oh, gosh.
But as generations passed, human nature took over, and the once humble and virtuous people turned greedy and pompous with all that the island continued giving them.
Dadgummit, it was too good to last.
It was too good to last. Atlanteans stopped thanking the gods for what they had, believing that they were in fact owed everything they obtained.
Uh-oh.
The human. Ever so stupid.
Very stupid.
Yes, very stupid. Well, the citizens' attitude got Zeus's attention. Sarah, you know where this is headed, don't you?
Nowhere good, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. Zeus was upset by these people, once so great, becoming vain and refusing to honor the gods, specifically also Poseidon, who literally gave them everything that they needed.
Yes!
So, wanting to punish them and teach them a lesson, Zeus phoned up all his besties to talk about how they'd teach Atlantis a dang lesson.
Oh dear.
When all of them RSVP'd and got together, Zeus said nothing.
What do you mean nothing?
Nothing. Nada. Zip.
Why? Why is that? Yenny, why didn't he say anything?
Well, because the story was never finished by Plato.
What? Talk about the biggest cliffhanger in ancient history.
Yeah. What we can gather from the portion Critias speaks of in the dialogue of Timaeus is that after Zeus's chat with the other gods, violent earthquakes and floods all but destroyed Atlantis.
Oof.
So now, here's the big question.
Was any of this dialogue, both in Timaeus and Critias, factual?
That has been the age-old question for centuries now. There is a huge divide between historians and scientists as to whether the lost city is factual or a fictional tale created by Plato regarding his own beliefs of what a utopia might look like, including the reason why it would fall.
Oh, it is definitely a good lesson on the hubris of man. Okay, so Yenny, with all this information, I do have another question. Out of Plato's 30 to 40 dialogues, Atlantis was mentioned only twice. So how did this minor detail in Plato's writing career end up being such a huge and maybe factual mystery today?
As time passed, many writers took up Plato's Atlantis and added to it, making it more and more fantastical, utopian, and filled with details that started to dilute the true, and that's with quotes, true, Atlantis story. With the few facts about where the lost city is located depicted by Plato, there's a plethora of explorers around the world who have mapped the globe in search for it. And I think a lot of this comes from how detail-oriented his story was, especially for that time.
Yeah.
Like, how do you come up with these exact details? I mean, obviously now with authors' imagination, which we'll certainly get into in another episode, the imagination is so vast now, but there was not that much of an imagination back then.
Well, and I'll argue the fact of, like, he's talking about, like, these actual locations, like the Strait of Gibraltar, the Pillars of Hercules, or Heracles. And I mean, the fact that, you know, he is building on it, he's taking this method of, you know, making it sound like truth, presenting it as truth, which has been a trope in writing for forever, this, you know, verisimilitude, something that is fictional and presenting it as if it is fact. I mean, come on, the Coen brothers today in their movies half the time put at the start of their movies, this is based off of true events. No, it isn't, but it makes for a great film.
There you go.
So most explorers have pinned the city, or to be more exact, the city which inspired the myth of Atlantis, to be somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, what they can't agree on are these locations. Some explorers say it's in Spain, some say Crete, Israel, northwestern Africa, and Santorini. Now, the location of Santorini is where the story of the town Akrotiri gives many historians the idea that Plato's work wasn't entirely fictional, and it was actually based on the events that occurred in that town. So, 3,600 years ago, Santorini had an advanced society of Minoans. The town of Akrotiri was described as a beautiful trading hub with decorated buildings and complex infrastructure. Sound familiar?
Yes.
So they were very advanced for their time. They were very prosperous. They were very wealthy. But the town was destroyed during the Theran eruption sometime around the 16th century BC, alongside its neighboring islands with massive earthquakes and tsunamis. This eruption buried the town of Akrotiri under 7 meters of a mixture of ash, lava, pyroclastic surges, which are waves of ash, pumice, and volcanic gases that come racing down the sides of volcanic mountains.
Fun.
Right. And lahar floods, which are super violent mudslides made from the material in pyroclastic surges. And these disasters ultimately wiped Akrotiri and the Minoan civilization out. All of this is definitely sounding familiar.
Yes, but while this exceptionally familiar and factual story, by the way, could debunk Atlantis, some believe it's just a coincidence and firmly continue to hold on to their beliefs in the lost city being real.
And I'm sure that other natural disasters, like the destruction of Pompeii in the 1st century AD, help preserve these beliefs. You know, if these explorers and everything are going, oh, well, you know, these natural disasters have happened multiple times. There could be one back that destroyed Atlantis, of course.
Yeah. Let's get into a little bit more modern times. Not too modern. We're still way back in the 1800s, but...
Yeah, more modern than the 1st century BC.
Yeah. So U.S. politician Ignatius Donnelly, born 1831 to 1901, was a firm believer in Atlantis.
May I interject real quick, Yanni, and say,
Of course.
as a side note, when you look up Ignatius Donnelly, he is often referred to as a fringe scientist or a pseudoscientist. I don't know whether he would be flattered or insulted by that, but I think I would be insulted.
Yeah, probably insulted.
But I am still prone to agree with that label for him. Personal opinion.
So, in his book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World...
The what?
Yep. Let me...
Okay.
He wrote that Atlantis was sort of like the Garden of Eden, and humans were able to outgrow their barbaric ways and become civilized in this region. He explains that Atlantis was part of the antediluvian world, which is a period in the Bible between the fall of man and the Great Flood depicted in the book of Genesis.
Ah, okay, thank you.
There you go, I got you. He has quite a few more theories, some specifying that Atlantis was where Indo-European, Semitic, and possibly Turanian people originated from. He also states that not all Atlanteans perished under the god's wrath. Some were able to escape to parts of Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Egyptians and Peruvian mythology of sun worshipping supposedly came from surviving Atlanteans.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he got things that kind of sounded the same and then, smushed them all together.
Yeah, it sounds like he's trying to talk correlation and a lot of these, the worship of sun gods. That's a pretty broad generalization.
Yeah. You won't tell me everybody's from Atlantis?
Yeah, so, okay, all right.
So, here's the thing, though. Americans weren't the only people curious about Atlantis. And guys, this section gets a little dark, so please beware.
I mean, we've already talked about nightmarish natural disasters and the destructions of real and possible fictionalized civilizations. How much darker could it get, Yenny?
Well, it could get dark with the Nazis.
Oh, I spoke too soon.
Nazi Germany was also obsessed with the ideas of Atlantis.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In fact, Heinrich Himmler, head of SS and Gestapo, alongside other Nazi leaders, believed that Atlantis was where the Aryan race originated.
Of course, because...
Of course.
All right.
You know how it goes. The eternal sigh. The leader's belief was backed up by Herman Wirth, a Dutch-German historian who had similar views to that of Donnelly. Wirth theorized that surviving Atlanteans had gone to Tibet. The Nazis' belief in this was so extreme that in 1938, Himmler sent an exploration unit to measure the faces of Tibetans and see if they truly were descendants of Atlantis.
That is, extreme.
It is.
And I mean, I'd expect nothing less, but... Okay, that's just weird. It's just weird. Let's
so
be honest
weird.
about it. You're going to go and you're going to measure the faces. Oh, my gosh. Okay. All right.
They found the facial features of Tibetans to be similar to that of Aryans. And, of course, Himmler was displeased, for racial mixing had occurred. Oh, the horror.
Right.
No. So this, unfortunately, only strengthened Himmler's dedication to creating a pure race.
Gag.
Yeah, super gag. But I thought it would be interesting to place this because that's how crazy this Atlantis theory is. This, a city that everybody's kind of, pining over being real.
Yeah.
It's that insane. It's that insane.
And people, are diving into it feet first, just no holds barred, absolutely just going, yes, this is the answer to everything. So, Yenny, that is some great information. That's some great research. But moving away from Nazis.
From the Nazis.
Just from the Nazis. Here, let me just, rain on the Nazis' parade for a bit. During the 1960s, the idea of continental drift became a widely understood and accepted concept. As people began to understand how plate tectonics and the spreading of the ocean floor works, it became understood that an entire lost continent was highly implausible. But, as always, there are still believers.
So let's move on to some explorers that have believed that they found some form of Atlantis or some type of, stuff that could lead to, yes, Atlantis is real.
Show me the evidence.
So, yes, let's see the evidence. So, in September of 1968, 3 divers by the names of Jacques Mayol, Robert Engrove, and Joseph Manson Valentine found a long submerged road on the northwest coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas.
Okay.
They are neatly placed rectangular limestone rocks and form a perfect line. They even found 2 similar linear paths parallel to the road. And at the southwest end, there's a very big hook.
Oh my gosh, it's Maui. Wait.
Probably.
Wrong myth. Sorry.
We don't know. At this point, they're all intertwined. So, unfortunately for my Atlantis believers out there, in 1978, my fam at the Department of Geology in the University of Miami found that these roads dated back to almost 4,000 years ago, with erosion only happening around 2,000 years ago. This doesn't really coincide with the over 11,000-year-old destruction of Atlantis. Remember, guys, the destruction of Atlantis was said to already have been 9,000 years old during the encounter Solon had with the priests from Egypt in Plato's writings.
Curse those dates not adding up.
Yeah.
So, Spain has also been an area of interest and where many believe the lost city could be. Bruce Blackburn, CEO of Merlin Burrows, a company that searches land and sea for lost treasures around the world using commercial satellites, believes he and his team have found evidence for Atlantis. Now, fair warning. It seems that their website hasn't been updated since 2020, so we are unsure if they're still around looking for treasure, and also their entire operation has been highly disputed by the scientific community. But this is just part of the homework, some more interesting things that you can look at, but it's all a saga. So maybe they are just having a 4-year slump with not updating anything on their website. We certainly understand that, Team Merlin, but there are many detractors of Merlin Burrows who don't really believe the company has actually found anything. So as we proceed with this section, take a tablespoon of salt.
Tablespoon of salt.
So around 2016, they, Merlin Burrows, found what could be Atlantis through, again, commercial satellite images in Spain's Doñana National Park. Based on depictions from Plato's writing of where the lost city was located, led this team to the Spanish coast near the Strait of Gibraltar. They found a few circular shapes that could be the bases of towers, the possible remnants of Poseidon's temple, a seawall, as well as signs of a tsunami, which all linked to Plato's writings. They took some samples from their findings, and when they were tested, they were dated to somewhere around 10,000 to 12,000 years old. But time for another hit of salt.
Dang it.
Neither Blackburn nor his team have ever given the exact methods used to test these findings that they pulled from the ocean. And the fact that we haven't heard much else from them in the past 4 years or so leaves these discoveries, quote unquote, to the believer's discretion.
And while Merlin Burrows' findings might be far-fetched, here's the thing. National Geographic actually did their own exploration for Atlantis. Coincidentally, their research also took them to Spain's Doñana National Park.
Coincidence, you say? I think not.
I think not. This is because Doñana National Park, or southern Spain in general, has quite a long human history. According to 2018's issue of the Journal of Archaeological Science, new research found Doñana sitting under Holocene sediment that dates as far back as 7,000 years ago.
Wow.
Not including additional pre-Holocene sedimentary deposits and fossilized sand underneath that, which dates several thousand years more. So it is kind of coinciding with Plato's writing.
That's pretty cool. So, maybe Merlin Burrows really has found something? Maybe.
Yeah. There are countless stories of explorers believing that they have found remnants of the lost city. But we believe we've covered some of the most intriguing ones.
Oh, for sure.
So now, let's go ahead, Sarah, and move on to pop culture.
Great. So, nothing says pop culture like 16th century or 17th century writing.
Nothing at all.
And we're just sort of diving into the echoes and influence of Atlantis through the ages. So, English lawyer, philosopher, theologian, and statesman Sir Thomas More wrote the book Utopia, which was heavily inspired by Plato's descriptions of Atlantis. Also, I highly recommend reading Utopia. Again, it's a short book.
Got it.
English philosopher and empiricist Sir Francis Bacon wrote The New Atlantis, which was published posthumously and was also unfinished at the time of its publication. But
why does nobody finish it?
Right?
Why?
Right? Like, stop leaving Atlantis on a cliffhanger.
Maybe it's the aliens. Who knows? I'm going conspiracy.
It's the curse of Atlantis.
The curse of Atlantis. Dun, dun, dun.
So, in The New Atlantis, Bacon wrote of his visions for a better future for humanity, a future filled with hope, discovery, and unity. Again, it followed the utopian themes Plato established for his mythic civilization, minus the downfall.
You think Kevin Bacon and Sir Francis Bacon are related?
This is a new version of the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, so, we could probably look that up.
Anywho, in the novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, written by Jules Verne and published in 1870.
Another good book.
Captain Nemo describes visiting Atlantis. This visit by the character sparked a massive interest in the lost city, and many films, TV shows, and books were created because of this one book.
Of course! And if the whole myth can start with just like 2 mentions and 2 of Plato's dialogues, one book can re-spark an obsession.
Why not?
Why not? Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote about the lost city of Opar, a colony of Atlantis, in his book, The Return of Tarzan, which, by the way, the Tarzan books can often be just totally insane.
Is this, you're talking about, like, Disney's Tarzan?
Yeah. Tarzan's based off of the book series by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh, well, look at that. Now we know more. So, creators Paul Norris and Mort Weisinger brought us Arthur Curry, a.k.a. DC Comics' Aquaman.
Yay!
The son of a human lighthouse keeper and the queen of Atlantis, who is the protector of the sea and king of Atlantis. He is also part of the Justice League, and I'll forever love Jason Momoa.
I loved Aquaman as a kid, and I love Jason Momoa as a grown-up. We've come full circle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And comic books in general, absolutely love Atlantis.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you Google Atlantis in comic books, like, you're going to get, like,
it's everywhere.
Multiple pages, like, all these links. It is excellent comic book fodder. So, there's an opera about Atlantis. Der Kaiser von Atlantis, the Emperor of Atlantis, was composed by Victor Ullmann and Peter Kine while they were both imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So the officers at the camp banned any performances of the opera, believing that the titular Emperor of Atlantis would be a satirical representation of Hitler. Because remember, the Nazi Party was obsessed with the Atlantis myth and story. So, of course, the officers are like, oh, well, this is going to poke fun of the Fuhrer, and we can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
The opera's composers sadly did not survive the war, but the opera manuscript did, and it had its world premiere in Amsterdam in 1975. The opera is described as a tragedy and is often called a legend in 4 parts rather than an opera, but it's a tragedy, an allegory, and a story of the necessity of death and the resilience of hope.
Now talking about it too, I would assume that after they went to Tibet and saw that there was racial mixing, they probably then banned anything about Atlantis because it was now they were ashamed of that.
Or they rewrote it, or they kind of tried to do a little bit of revisionist history as as things go. But on a lighter note,
please,
other appearances of Atlantis, because I'm sure you were all wondering when we would get to this, Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which, love that movie as a kid. Love that movie as an adult. It's great.
Yes.
But in that story, a young adventurer bands together with a colorful team of explorers and some ruthless ones and becomes a key player in finding and saving the lost city of Atlantis. Where are all my Milo Thatch fans at? Right here.
He is so hot. Oh, it's my turn. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Atlantis is where Poseidon's palace is located.
Naturally.
Percy's half-brother Tyson works in Atlantis, and if you haven't read the series, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite YA books. Actually, no, it's not a young adult. Actually, kind of is. No, not really.
I think it starts as young adults.
It starts
and then
as, yeah.
It kind of grows with its audience, kind of like what Harry Potter did, I think, kind of, sort of.
No, I think it's like Harry Potter. He's like 12 until 18 or something.
So, within the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, because yes, we're going there, Atlantis is the origin of the duel monsters.
Ancient Aliens did a whole special on Atlantis, and of course, y'all, linked it to aliens.
Of course. And in keeping with the sci-fi theme, we can never forget Stargate Atlantis. And phew, did Atlantis have a long history in that series. Like, there were aliens, there were, transporting from planet to planet. It was the base of operations. It was a lot. But wait, there's more. We lied earlier. We lied, Yenny.
How could we?
Merlin Burroughs is coming back from their 4-year slump.
No.
Yes. You can look forward to learning more about the Merlin Burroughs team and their findings, quote unquote, on their 2-hour documentary, Atlantica, set to premiere this year, 2024. You can check out the trailer and we will leave it in the show notes.
Yes. Also, I would say there's only been mention of the trailer. It seems like they're showing the movie when they go to conventions. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's going to be like something they post on YouTube or something they post on their website or something that you have to pay for. But again, remember to take it with a tablespoon of salt because there are a lot of things. There's loose ties all around there. So
and
loose ends.
Loose ends. And folks, we do know
loose ties.
It works. I was about to say, and folks, we do know that it's the saying is take it with a teaspoon of salt and all that sort of stuff. But man, some of these people, you need all that salt. You need that teaspoon.
Yeah, that's our new saying. Take a tablespoon of salt.
We'll make merch. So,
yes.
Yenny, I think it's time for a siren call.
Absolutely.
Folks, read Critias and or Timaeus by Plato, the allegory of the hubris of human nations. That way you can A, learn what Plato was trying to say as he brought Atlantis to our collective attention, and B, dive deeper into Atlantis and all the details revolving around Poseidon and Plato's home. It's free to read online, and we will leave the link in the summary of this episode.
You can also check out National Geographic's Atlantis Rising, a documentary that explains all the findings the NG team found when searching for the lost city. Definitely a fun watch. It does end up with them going to Doñana National Park, but it also ties in other places that they tried to look for it. And in reality, they kind of found something, but not really. It's, again, these loose ends.
I feel like we don't need as much salt with the National Geographic documentary, though. I don't think we need as much salt.
Yeah, they were pretty upfront with, maybe they found something, maybe they didn't.
Yeah, maybe this is what inspired Atlantis, stuff like that. So, Yenny, you covered a lot of territory here.
Oh, Lord.
The history of the legend of Atlantis is fascinating and multifaceted, and there's so much we didn't get to, but oh my gosh, the work you did on this, Yenny, is outstanding. So,
aw, thank you.
But I will say I'm very excited because just with how much work you put into this and how much information was out there that we didn't even cover.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if maybe we should look into some other legendary locations. Maybe.
Yeah, we should definitely discuss this idea more because there's so much. And that's the wonderful thing about myths and legends and why we love this so much. But for now, we've given our listeners enough to ponder. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode, to the continuation of this podcast that we've worked so hard on.
Thank you for being here.
We hope you're enjoying it. Yes, thank you for being here, laughing with us a lot, hopefully. I mean, we think we're funny.
I think we're very funny. We're great.
I think we are. So, to many more.
To many more.
All right, guys. Story Sirens, signing out.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Story Sirens. You can follow us on Instagram at Story Sirens Podcast. Want to support us? Send us a cup of Ko-fi by searching ko-fi.com/storysirens. We've got lots of treats for those who become siren seekers. All research materials can be found in the episode summary. Music by Donald Guzzi and artwork by Alexis Torres. Story Sirens is a Feather and Fin production. See you soon.